Exam season is always intense and it's a lot of pressure, and you end up going through this cycle of being stressed, procrastinating because you're stressed, and then getting even more stressed out because you wasted that much time. But I've been through this process so many times that I feel like I have some insights, and I want to talk about some things that I know would have benefited even me a year or two ago. I've literally just been through this. I came back from my last exam. My exam hall was right across from where I live. So anyways, my name is Zain. I'm a first year medical student at the University of Manchester. I'm just finishing off first year. But let's work top to bottom, starting from time management. People get obsessed with having the most perfect routine during exam season, but the thing is, it really doesn't matter. I say this because the average medical student I knew was waking up at 7 a.m. They were working 12 plus hours every day, buried in their work in the library. Literally any library I went to, half the seats were packed with medical students. And because I kept seeing this so much, I started to think maybe I am at a stage where I do need to be putting in the hours in and having this strict routine that I follow every day, because maybe that is the only way to do well and successfully pass the exams. And so I started to actually put this strict routine in and do this for a couple of days, where I wake up at 6 a.m. and then go gym and then grind for the rest of the day until 10 p.m. 12 a.m. But I very quickly realized that not only was my diet and social life suffering, my mood was being affected by things like me waking up late one day and not being on schedule, or by the fact that I didn't put in the hours in today. My mood was getting affected more by those things than it was by the actual work that I was doing, the quality of the work. And as soon as that started to happen, I realized that having a good routine is helpful, but having this idealistic perfect one is not required in the recipe of getting a good grade, especially if it was adding that much extra pressure on me for no reason. So I went back to something that I was comfortable with, something that I always did in the past. This was my study routine. I'd wake up between 9 and 10 a.m. usually, and I'd finalize my to-do list by 11 a.m. But from 11, that's when I started working. 11 to 2, I'd put in a good 3 hours of work. Then I'd break, go have lunch. From 2 to 3, catch up with friends, whatever I want to do. Then 3 to 5, I'd work again, 2 hours. Then 5 to 7, I'd go gym, I'd do something fun, whatever I feel like doing. I'd end up having dinner as well. And then from 7 to 11, because I know I concentrate best during that evening time, that's when I put in just a straight 4 hours of work. And then after 11, I'd chill again. I'd do whatever I want until I fall asleep. And it was that easy. If you follow this, you've now done 8 to 9 hours of work. You've not had to wake up at 6 a.m. You woke up at 9 to 10 a.m. And you also got a full 5 plus hours of chill time during the day as well. My point is that you don't need to wake up at 6 a.m. and study till midnight with no breaks. It's just not sustainable. It's not worth it. It's not required. The next tip is going to be about cramming, and ideally, yes, you don't want to be in a situation where you have to cram for a subject, and you do want to be going through the learning process properly, where you understand, you encode, you make questions, you practice them, and you do this in spaced intervals for all your topics. But that being said, if you do have some topics and some stuff to cram for, which is natural and all of us do, then the most helpful thing that I suggest is to do 2 past papers and then analyze the crap out of them. Whatever stage you're at, whatever you're doing, just do these questions and then write down every single topic that you got wrong in that paper, every single thing that you were unsure about, anything that was even slightly confusing to you. Make a list of these topics and then simply revise them. It's that simple. Whatever it is, whether it's essay-based subjects, content-based, whether it's practical problems, you'll always have some form of questions that you can do to assess your ability. Find the best resources for that subject and then spend time on those weaknesses. That's the only way you'll make progress. So last week I was speaking to most of my friends and people I know about what they were gonna do during this last week before exams. And most of them said something along the lines of, yeah, I'm gonna start from case 1 and then go downwards, case by case, topic by topic, and just skim through everything generally. But if you think about it a little, that isn't really possible if you only have a couple of days. It's not a very good use of your time. Let's just be clever, like you know some stuff better than you know the rest of your weaknesses. So if you're cramming, be logical. Focus on your weaknesses first and then move to the other stuff and figure out what those weaknesses are by testing yourself. You doing the 2 past papers, yes, it is gonna take time, and yes, it is using your limited papers or limited questions that you have, but you need to do so in order to figure out, to get evidence for what you're good at and what you're not. I think a lot of people think that to test yourself, to start doing the practice papers that you have, you need to first learn something, then revise it, and then do papers. That's the only way they'll be useful. When the truth is that there's not only tons of credited studies that tell us to test yourself before you even start studying the topic or during your actual studying, but my experiences, so many other people's experiences tell us time and time again that testing is key. And I know I sound really passionate about this, but if you are cramming, then just do 20 questions every single day before before your exams. My personal aim for the last few weeks was always to do 10 to 20 questions before I start doing a case or start doing a big topic, and then during the thing try and test myself as well, and then after as well try and figure out what I didn't really 100% understand and test myself on that again. And the days that I focused on these techniques that I know work well, the days that I was active with my learning, everything just stuck a lot better, and my understanding of those topics that I spent that much time doing this testing on they were a lot better than the other ones. It doesn't really take that much extra time, and it enhances the rest of your actual learning process so much. This is kind of the polar opposite of my usual take, but here it is. Even though being efficient is what everyone's striving for, a lot of us on YouTube love it as well, I really feel like sometimes, even if you are cramming, I do feel like taking the slow route and absorbing information and processing it is really helpful sometimes. So for example, last week I was really tired and exhausted. I was getting through case 4, which was heart failure. I started off by doing my questions. I was a couple of days behind, so I wanted to try and get ahead and speed through it all, and I did. I was done with all of it in 5 hours. This is a week's worth of content, hundreds of pages. In 5 hours, I was gassed. But the thing is, I knew that nothing really was linking in my head, and even though I took a lot of the information in, I didn't really understand it 100%. So instead of trying to move on to the next case and jump to the next topic, I decided to screw the schedule. And I sat there and reread my notes for a couple hours, and I ended up watching an hour-long video on the main concepts as well. And honestly, that slow learning of the difficult topics was incredible. Instead of just jumping forward, I gave myself enough time to be inefficient with it, because I was able to not only just get a better understanding of the broader concepts, but I was also able to dive into the teeny tiny details. And the topics that I kind of dove in deeper on that date are the topics that literally came up on the exam. So sometimes going through weak topics, giving it more time, as per the law of equal and opposite advice, is good. Memory tricks are really helpful in those last few days before the exams, because you're at the point where you know that there isn't enough time to understand everything and retain it in your head, so the only real option is rote memorization. But the 3 things that I did to make this rote memorization as natural as possible were stupid stories, mnemonics, and drawings. All of them easy and quick. I memorized the roles of the hormones and the processes in the coagulation cascade by coming up with stories about the specific hormones. For example, for prostacyclin, I thought, okay, prostacyclin is cycling down to inhibit platelet activation. And that sort of stuff is really helpful. Or we'd use mnemonics for stuff like the complications of a myocardial infarction, Darth Vader. There was also pause fail for the anterior part of your forearm muscles. There was sits for the rotator cuff muscles. And there was a bunch of these that we all, as medical students, I think the majority of medical students use these and knew about them. Anyways, point is, doing this sort of stuff is really simple, and it makes it very easy to actually remember it for the next few weeks. And when you do come up with these stories or mnemonics or these dumb rhymes, make sure to explain them to people, tell your friends about it, because that'll not only help them, but it'll also help you remember it because you're repeating it to them. On exam day, other than all the classic stuff that everyone tells you to do, relax, eat well, sleep well, all important stuff, but what I'm going to tell you is a very unorthodox tip. This is something that I always do, and it helps me not burn out during the 2 hours of sitting inside the exam hall. This isn't your average exam tip, and I don't think many people consciously do this, but the basic logic is that we think about our attention spans and our concentration when we're studying normally. So why don't we do that for the exam and during the exam as well? When you concentrate on one activity, one stressful activity for that long, your mental agility, how fast you think, all of that drops, and you don't want that in an exam. I remember reading about this, and it's called vigilance decrement, and it's when your cognitive resources are depleting as the more you progress through any stressful activity. It's almost as if your brain needs a small break to rest. Not a long one, just a small reset. And that's exactly what I do. After a portion of my exam is complete, I have a rule where I have to take 30 to 45 seconds off, 100% disconnected from that exam. I know it's risky, there's a time limit, there's a clock going down, and you're waiting for that guy to shout pens down, but it's worth it. Now, this doesn't mean just put your pen down and stretch and keep other problems that you have to work on. It means completely disconnecting and not thinking about that exam at all, full stop. Just for 1 full minute. And yeah, it is a lot, but it makes all the questions you do for the next 30 minutes, 35 minutes so much more effective. Your brain is 100% refreshed and your focus is back up there. Obviously, don't do this in the middle of a high focus period where you're solving a complex equation or in the middle of writing your main paragraph. Do this when there's a natural break in your exam. As soon as you come back, boom, you're back in full focus exam mode. The majority of us leave some, if not most, of our work for a few days before the exams. So if you want to learn to effectively and cleverly plan 3 days of cramming for a test, for an assessment, for any big exam that you have, then check this video out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped, and I'll see you whenever I do because I'm not doing anything for a couple of days now. Bye!